Good afternoon, good evening, Harlem. I'm Terri Wisdom, and this is Harlem Network News. And as many of you know, Harlem Network News is a media platform. We started at the onset of COVID, and we are still here. And we consider ourselves an essential service, bringing news and information to the people. We really, our mantra and our purpose is to engage the people, make sure that the people are informed, and it's a call to action. Media is the message, and the message is the media, and often our stories are not told. So it's very critical that we tell our own stories and we dissect what we see, because it's impactful to our lives. So very critical. We're on all social media. We ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and donate if you can, because that helps us to continue with the work. We also ask, if you have stories or news and information, please reach out to us so that can happen. We're at harlemnetworknews@gmail.com, and you can hit us up on all social medias. We're at 646-261-5397. So today we have an incredible and iconic show, just in a sense of all the things that are going on in the country. We have Ms. Sharonne Salaam with us, who is the founder of Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated. She is also the mother of our new city council person, Dr. Yusef Salaam, formerly the Central Park Five, now the Exonerated Five, real activists in our community. And we also have with us Harlem attorney, Roger Wareham. And Roger and Ms. Salaam have an incredible connection, in terms of the Central Park case, and also the fact that Ms. Salaam has been giving a series this month with Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated, with several different attorneys, community members attending. And yesterday, Roger Wareham was the center of the forum. So Ms. Salaam, would you just say hello to our supporters, our constituents, let them know who you are, whose you are, and then Roger, you're going to do the same. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We are grateful.
Okay, I'm very glad to be here. I'm Sharonne Salaam, and I'm with Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated. And I'm just glad to be of some service to our Harlem community and bringing forth this information that they definitely need to know.
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Salaam, for joining us. And we are very, very grateful and happy to get the word out to the people, because, like you said, there are a lot of critical issues that must be addressed. And yes, we can do this together, unity in the community. So thank you. And Roger Wareham, please let us know who you are and whose you are. You are a Harlem legend. Just precedes you. Yes, you are.
Well, I'll say I was Harlem born, Harlem Hospital, Harlem raised. In the past few years, have defected to Brooklyn in terms of residence, but always Harlem is in my heart. I'm an attorney. I'm a human rights attorney. I'm a member of the December 12th movement. And in terms of connection with Sharonne, as a community organizer, was tied to the case from when it first happened in 1989.
Yes.
Right through the time when they were released in 2002. My role with the case in 2002, when Matias Reyes, the person who actually perpetrated the crimes against the jogger in Central Park, came forward and confessed that he was the one, was to be part of the legal team that got their convictions overturned, and then filed a civil lawsuit for them to get some kind of reparations for what they've been put through, which wasn't resolved till 11, 12 years later, because Mayor Bloomberg and the police department and a lot of the district attorneys people were opposed to settling the case. So the organizing that finally led to the settlement was that every person who was running for mayor in 2013, we made it very clear that if you wanted the vote of our community, you had to be prepared to settle that case. And de Blasio, to his credit, when he got in office, did do that. So it's been a continuing issue of legal work and organizing, and they're all tied together. And that was I think, the basis of my invitation to the series that Sharonne has been sponsoring out of her son's and the councilman's office.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us. And here at Harlem Network News, we really don't make assumptions. Our audience is intergenerational. So Roger, if you would just share a bit, because you said the December 12th movement, and we want to make sure everybody knows what that represents. So thank you.
So the December 12th movement is an organization that began on December 12th, 1987, in response to just a series of attacks on our community by the police, by white vigilante mobs, and not simply in New York, but across the state. So the actual first demonstration on December 12th, 1987 was held up in Newburgh, New York, which was kind of halfway between where a lot of things have been happening. And so it was from that demonstration, the groups that came together the following week, and on December 21st of 1987, we held what was called a Day of Outrage. The idea being that as long as we were not getting justice in New York, that New York City was not going to be able to conduct business as usual. And it was a demonstration that successfully just shut down the transit system and the bridges to make a statement. And that's been part of our ongoing work in terms of understanding the connection between how an organized community can get results out of the political and economic arena, but we have to be organized.
Okay,
Yes,
well,
we
thank
do.
you for sharing. And yes, Ms. Salam, I'm sorry. Did
I
you want
said,
to comment?
yes, we do. We must be organized. We must be organized with activities that we can do on the ground. And we have to organize with educational knowledge that leads toward those activities.
Okay, well, thank you. And would you share a little bit, Ms. Sharonne Salaam, about justice for the wrongfully incarcerated, why you created it, and what justice for the wrongfully incarcerated represents? Thank you.
Well, we started Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated, and I'm saying we because actually Yusuf Salaam and other family members, Aisha Salaam and others were all part of the creation of Justice for Wrongfully Incarcerated. And we've done a number of activities that lead itself toward bringing awareness that there are people who are incarcerated wrongfully. There are people who are incarcerated rightfully, but whether you're incarcerated wrongfully or rightly, there are issues around your incarceration that needs to be addressed and that people need to be aware of. Because it's unfortunate that one of the largest population or the largest population of people who are incarcerated are people who have the same color as me. And what's so sad about that is, you know, when you look at people with the same color as me, and I imagine I'm part of what you would call like the darker hue of the colors, even within that spectrum, the lighter you are, the better off you might be, maybe. But we still need to move together within our communities to with awareness and knowing how we need to behave under certain situations, how we can protect our families under certain situations, and how we can become involved. This is why when you look at organizations like December 12th movements and other organizations, and people come to us and they say, well, gee, you know, what can we do? How can we do this, that, or the other? Can we get help? The main thing is to connect with organizations that are doing things that lead toward the help that you seek. It's very difficult to be out there on a limb all by yourself. You need people around you. When you're going to court, you need people who can show up in the courtroom. You know, if you need witnesses, you need people who are willing to talk. And if you're by yourself, it's harder to get these people to come forward on your behalf. So it's imperative that we join forces with people who are out there doing those types of things. When we started with this case that Roger Wareham mentioned many years ago, only organizations who had a history of advocacy and policing came forward. It took years before the masses joined on and to be a part of it. And even today, we are still looking at situations where someone can walk right out of their door and the police can stop them and say anything like, why are you walking out of your door? You know, haven't I seen you walking out of your door before and you just came out of the shower? But we need to organize around that to make that kind of change. One person can't do it, but if we come together, we can.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, Ms. Salaam. And it's very true. As a media person, as a journalist, especially during COVID, and I've worked at all the networks, and you know, independent films, that's my background. But once COVID hit, I knew it's very critical to start this network because it was a lot of misinformation. Black people were walking around Harlem talking about, I'm Black, I can't get it. You know, so it was really important to talk to the people. And a lot of people died because of it, because they did not have the clear information. So I think that what you're saying in terms of cases and, you know, incarceration, people being stopped, because we also know, you know, I can personally speak for here in Harlem, that Stop and Check is alive and well. There are police on every corner. You can be stopped for anything. I don't care how old you are, you know, or if you have all your papers, you know, in line for your car. There are times where they're on either side of the street and they are just stopping us. And we know even with an incident, it doesn't matter who you are. You know, our very own council member, Dr. Yusef Salaam, was stopped for tinted windows, you know, shortly after it was all resolved. But that's an example of what can happen to you. So these kind of conversations with our young people, because we are under siege, it's a very critical time, and the prison industrial complex is alive and well. So we're moving right along. If you would like to share, Ms. Salaam, the essence of the discussion and purpose yesterday with Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated with our iconic Roger Wareham, attorney Roger Wareham. Thank you.
Well, let me just say, during this month, we have had these criminal law talks on every Saturday from 10 to 12, let's say, and sometimes they run over because obviously when you have people like Roger Wareham in the room, people just don't want to let him go. And he seems to be, you know, trying to get towards the door, but he just can't move to get out of the room. So he's still there trying to help people. That's the kind of person he is. So we have these talks. Each one of the attorneys that come in talk on different aspects of criminal law. And his conversation was your defense. And he was able to answer quite a few questions, and people stayed behind asking him more questions. And he was really very lenient with his time and sharing to try to give people the information they needed to move forward. And that's what we are trying to do. And that's what our city councilman, because we were right here in his office, and he's partnering with us and supporting us to try to get this information out to the community who is in need of this knowledge.
Well, thank you. And Roger Wareham, attorney Roger Wareham, what was your experience yesterday? What was the message that you really brought to the people, and, you know, the most interest and problems that people had in terms of what their need was? Thank you.
The first thing was I wanted to thank Sharonne and the councilman for having the series, because a lot of times the problems that our folks encounter is simply just a lack of information or a lack of preparation how to respond in situations. And the situation of the Central Park 5 was a classic example of that, with very tragic consequences. But you know, for Matias Reyes coming forward, I said yesterday, we wouldn't have been sitting there yesterday because you said still would have been a convicted felon. He still would have been a registered sex offender, and he certainly would not have been elected as the city council person. So the point I was dealing with one aspect, which was the question of preparing a defense. There had been a prior meeting that dealt with what happens once you're exonerated, and a prior meeting, what do you do when you're stopped in the street, which I understand was very well attended because everybody's
Yes.
facing that problem. Only a limited number of people get to the question of organizing your defense. I can't say limited, but not everyone who's stopped gets arrested. And so what we were focusing on around the defense was it's like a carryover from the other one. The first thing is when you stop by the police, if they had started to question you, you ask them, am I under arrest? And if you're not under arrest, then am I free to go? If they say you're not free to go, then the only information you give them is just your basic sort of pedigree information. Pedigree, I live here, I work here, whatever. But if they start asking you about some kind of situation, you do not want to answer that question. I think that's, if anything comes out of this series, it's that people should not be answering any questions about any allegation or reason that the police are stopping you. Did you see so and so? Your position is, I'm not answering any questions. Am I under arrest? Am I free to go? If not, then I want to have an attorney, which for them is an automatic signal that they're not supposed to question you anymore. Part of the discussion was that people get caught up, they get nervous. They know they know they didn't do anything. They may have seen something and they'll say, well, I saw this, but I wasn't involved in it. Just don't do that. At the point when the police are prepared to arrest you, then it's just basically keep your mouth shut. And so we talked about that. We talked about the question of the bail laws under New York State, because in terms of, from a lawyer's perspective, it's always better to have your client on the street, so they can help in terms of their defense. Because I come from the school of point of view that your client is an intelligent human being, that as an attorney, I have certain training, but I certainly don't have all the answers, and that your client can, if your client's actively participating in the defense, it's a much more effective defense. So we talked about that. We dealt with, and then we dealt with a lot of questions that people had, some of which were related to the theme I was dealing with, but went across a broad spectrum. And then they also raised some questions in terms of areas that I think Sharonne said they'll address in other kind of fora that they're going to be setting up. But I thought the importance of it was that the Sharonne series was responding to the questions that people have, and people had a lot of questions. And the impression I got from when they left was that we didn't have all the answers, but at least it pointed them in the right directions in terms of some things, and then answered the questions concretely in others.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for that. And I do know that this situation, in terms of people being arrested, people being incarcerated wrongfully and otherwise, is a very critical situation in our community. There's nobody who, for the most part, if you sit in a family circle, most people have had someone arrested in their family. I can raise my hand and say, I have, you know what I'm saying? And when it happens, you're faced with trying to get an attorney. There's a lot of money may be involved that you don't have. And you also, even if you spend the money, the right attorneys and the right situations may not happen for you. And then, more things happen to your loved one. And then, of course, which Ms. Salaam and Brother Wareham know, that it becomes a great expense for the family as well. Expense to visit the person, expense to send the person money so they can eat, concern whatever the circumstance is for their life, because we understand from what's going on in the prison system. So, what Ms. Salaam was saying in terms of, visiting the people, a group, coming to the court, all of these things really matter. And as many of you know, my circumstance, even my son was shot and killed on the Shinnecock Reservation 2.5 years ago. He was 43 years old. And even after the person is gone, you are still mostly fighting a legal battle, because when a Black or brown person is killed, no one is trying to find the perpetrator. You know what I'm saying? So it's even, from heaven, and post-death, I am now having to fight this war to get the state troopers or whoever it is, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, to address, like, a person was murdered. Like, this is unacceptable. I'm a member of Harlem Mothers and Fathers Saved, and there's at least 50 people in that organization that have the same thing going on. So we have a lot of critical issues, and people are very frustrated. And if you would just say a little bit, just in terms of the world and the administration that we're living in right now, what the circumstances are, what we can do, how we can become active. Roger, you may want to speak to that. Ms. Salaam, of course, you're speaking to that with Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated, but it doesn't appear it's getting better. It appears it's getting worse.
Right. I think that's an accurate description. The situation we face on the streets is tied to the declining nature of the U.S. economy. I mean, and that's the point they never want to deal with. They say, oh, the economy's doing well. They're talking about that 0.1% who own maybe 50% of the wealth in the country. But for people on the ground, the situation is getting worse. And when the economic situation gets worse, crime goes up. People are trying to survive. And politically, what's developing in the system, in which, and Trump embodies that, is that there's an increasing attack on so-called democratic rights that people thought were ensured by the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, New York State Constitution, and laws that have been passed. There's a retreat on that on all fronts, so that politically, what we're looking at is the development of fascism in this country. And if we don't understand that, and it's a term that people need to understand, then we won't understand the absolute necessity of people organizing to combat that, to fight the changes that are happening in the legal system, to fight the changes that are happening in the hospitals, in the schools. It's not enough to rely on your elected representatives. It requires active participation. So I think, if anything from this interview, that we hope that the people who listen to it, people who see it, begin to get involved in some organization, because otherwise you'll have nobody to blame but yourself as things get worse. And if it hasn't come to you directly yet, it will be coming to you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Roger. And Ms. Salaam of Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated, would you like to speak to that? Thank you.
Well, one of the things I'd like to agree with Roger 100%. In many ways, we are under attack, especially the attack is geared toward us on every level, and it's reaching down into the schools where our children are under attack. Because in any situation where your people's progress can be eliminated from the learning curve, then you don't really have a sense of purpose in this whole world that's going on around you. We only have 1 month where we're learning about African American history, but throughout the entire year, we learn about European history, about Jewish histories and other histories. And it makes it seem that we have no history. And when people in our communities and our children hear this type of thing, it lowers their self-esteem to an effect where they become victims of what might be called a criminal justice environment. And they might see that as their only way out, where we have a rich legacy that can push them forward into other types of things that are positive. And we have positive people who want to do these things. We need to come together in a force that's strong enough to make it possible for our community to move forward and to work together. Because one thing that people say, and that is that a Black community that is unified is hard to beat. But as long as we're struggling against one another, it's very easy for them to come in. And when you look at the criminal injustice process, when you're looking at the criminals themselves, it's not one manufacturing gun company that I know of that's owned by Black people.
Okay.
But they are flooding our communities. No one has these classes where our Black young people, old people are going out learning how to use these guns, but they're flooding in. So we become the victims of the flood, and we also become the fillers of the prison industrial complex. It's like a round robin, and we have to really get out of that. And the only way we're going to get out of it in part is through knowledge of self. That's why I say they're reaching down into our educational process at younger and younger ages so that people will feel they have no future other than to become criminals in a way. Because what was it, the third or the fourth grade, they say? It's when they determine how many prisons they're going to need. And what we need to determine and to decide amongst ourselves is, are we going to be the ones filling those prisons? Or are we going to make a change in our own lives so that we can move forward and be the success that we know we can be?
Okay, well, thank you for that. This is Terri Wisdom, and this is Harlem Network News. And my sentiments exactly on that. I have spent the past year and a half really working in the schools right here in District 5, which is Central Harlem. And I really have seen an extreme, separate but not equal education. And as you said, loss of hope, even, you know, with the asylum seekers that are here in this city, they're living downtown on 30th Street and they're busing them up to District 5. And that's real talk in a situation that's already pushed and stressed. So we've got to focus on knowing who we are, knowing our culture, and not assuming that young people know who Martin Luther King is, who Malcolm X is. We cannot make those assumptions. We have to teach them. It has to start from within. And of course, there has to be a lot of love and care, because I literally have seen like a second grader pulled out of the class by the school police, you know, because they didn't want to sit down. So, I mean, it starts early. It's now starting earlier than the third grade. So we've got to really look at that. We've got to really address it, and bring that culture, bring that knowledge of self. I have a question for you, Roger, and we're going to close down the Salaam as well. But some of the instances that are happening in our community have to do with, you know, like you said, economics has really exacerbated this problem. And then, of course, they're flooding the drugs into our community. That exacerbates it. And the stress level that people are dealing with is also causing mental illness and mental instability. You know, it's very stressful just driving or walking down the street because you don't know if you see the police, like if they're going to try to take you, you know. So it's a high stress level that's going on. But what do people do? Because we've had instances where a mother or a family member, their family member was in mental distress. And in many instances, they don't call the police because they don't want the police to come and kill them and their loved one. So what do we do in that kind of instance? What is the best recommendation if a family member's having a mental situation and you need help, but you know, you're afraid to call for help because you don't know what's going to happen? So what would your recommendation be from a professional member?
Yeah, that's difficult. I know that there's a hotline for people who are suffering suicidal ideations, or you know, things. There's a hotline for that, and I forget the number. I think it's 990, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I would call 311 and emphasize that you want a medical personnel. You don't want the police. I know sometimes people call 911 and tell them that they don't want the police, that they want people who are trained to deal with folks who are having emotional disturbances, and insist on that. But it's, you know, it's a crapshoot sometimes with that, because sometimes the police still show. And there's no easy answer to that, because we're in a situation where the institutions of government are supposed to deal with it, but the institutions of government are institutionally racist. And so how someone who is white would get treated, there's no guarantee that a person is black. So, and I think it's also a demand on our political representatives to get funding for mental health treatment. A lot of folks really should not be on the street. They're on the street because the institutions that are supposed to serve them have been cut back. So we've got to get them refunded. Some of this is tied to, we have a campaign around reparations in the December.
Okay, yes, thank you.
And our demand, which we've been making since Biden was elected, was he has the as president, he can issue an executive order that would provide a $50 billion down payment on reparations. And our focus of our campaign is that $50 billion needs to be directed towards state-of-the-art medical care in our communities. That would include both physical and mental health. So that's part of it also. So people who are interested can go to our website, and it's d12m.com, www.d12m.com, and you go to the menu and see what the reparations campaign is about. Because I think it's a way, first of all, it's something he could do, whether he runs for president or not. He, as a president, he can sign it. He did it with Ukraine, he's done it with Israel. But it would get people thinking about, how do we pressure our representatives to get the funding we need to address the questions, the problems in our community?
Okay, thank you for that. And Ms. Salaam, if you would just address that and give us your closing statement. And then Roger, you kind of gave your closing statement, but if
yeah, I'm good.
I'd like to say that's all good. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Salaam.
Well, since Council Member Yusef Salaam has been in office, there have been a few bills that have been passed that look at these types of situations in a way. And one of them is, if the police stop you for anything, they're supposed to now keep records of who was stopped, why the person was stopped, and other types of information, so that we would have an opportunity to analyze what's happening within the communities at large. So if they stop you for a reason, if they stop you for nothing, they're supposed to have something written down. And that becomes very important if you're trying to monitor what is happening in the beginning stages of arrest, or before arrest even happens. You understand what I'm saying? So when you're looking at that, then you look at the other situations in terms of when they stop you for this nothingness, or they stop you for somethingness. There also was another issue that was addressed through the councilman's office, and that issue was the issue related to the immunity that police have, total immunity from whatever it is they do. So that also has and is being addressed within these forums of how this situation happens, because in the past, the police had total immunity. So whatever they did, they were covered unless it was something out of the line of whatever it is they do. And since we as a community don't know what that line is, we don't know if they're in the line or out of the line. So now at least we have someone in office who is trying to identify the line so that we know what the line is. But we must come together as a community. We must do things that's going to empower our own people, our own community, and help us move forward. And I cannot express enough the idea of join an organization, be a part of something, so that if somebody comes for you, you have somebody you can call. Everybody might not have Roger Wareham's number.
Okay.
You might have your reverend's number you could call. You might have your neighbor's number, but don't have you or your children or other family members walking around not knowing anybody that they can call for help.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Ms. Salaam. And how can people get involved with Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated? And I believe you have another forum set up for next week. So if you would just share that information with us before we.
Okay, now we have a forum set up for this coming Saturday, and we have it from 10 to 12. And we'll have forums also in the following month. These criminal law talks are going to be going on for 2 months. And then we change up and we'll be doing other kind of talks. We're going to be having them at the councilman's office, and his office is located at 163 Lenox, or if you prefer, as I do, Malcolm X Boulevard. That's between 118th and 119th Streets in Harlem.
Okay.
All are welcome. Come early, because I did have a conversation just yesterday, right, Roger?
Uh-huh.
The attorneys come on time. Be on time if you want the information.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And how can they reach Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated?
Well, they can reach Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated by calling me at 646-320-6209.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I know there's a presence online as well, and Facebook and all of that with Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated.
That's right. And if they want to come and help, volunteer, there is always room for that.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Roger Wareham, attorney Roger Wareham, and Harlem, even though you're in Brooklyn, it's Harlem's of the world. If you would close us out, Roger, and just give us a message of hope and how we move forward, and
Sure.
how to get in touch with you or the organization.
Sure. Right.
December 3rd. Thank you.
Contact with myself and through the December 12th movement is 929-692-7609. I don't know. I think my screen is frozen, but that's cool. You can, as long as you,
it's okay. We can hear you.
I think, you know, our chairperson, Viola Plummer, passed in January. And one of the things that she always said was that that you have to have faith in the masses of people, that people don't submit to things forever. And that if you have that faith and you organize, people will come around and they'll change the conditions we face. And that's the mantra by which I live, by which we do our work, that in the final analysis, no matter at times how bleak may be at times, as long as we do our work, we put out the word, we educate people, people will come to their conclusions at different points. But when they do, I think as Sharonne said earlier, if we're united as a community, nothing can stop us. And I think that's what we have to take out of it. I think that's what your program represents, Terry, in terms of getting information out to people. As long as we have that, then we will definitely inevitably win.
Right. And all on one accord. Thank you, Roger. It's great to see you. And I'm sorry I missed you in person yesterday, but it's a virtual world. So this is a very good thing. And that message is like a drumbeat through the community. I was at the Abyssinian Baptist Church this morning with our new minister, Reverend Johnson. And it was really just saying, you know, start with yourself, you know, a unity of one, of moving forward. And then we have to come together as a village, as unity. And that is the overall message that we have to stand. So thank you, Ms. Salaam, for continuing to do the work. And we know that it's possible. Ms. Salaam and I met and worked on the gate of the exonerated for almost 2 years.
Right.
And you know, there was a lot of back and forth and agreeing to disagree. But at the end of the day, nobody took their toys and went home. And we have a gate of the exonerated right there on 110th near the 5th Avenue. I encourage everybody to visit that, because that's a symbol of unity and people of working together. And that was 150 years. There's never been a gate naming in Central Park, and we did that. So it is indeed possible. So thank you. And once again, subscribe to Harlem Network News. You can reach me at 646-261-5397, harlemnetworknews.org, harlemnetworknews@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias, and you can make your donations through Zelle, Cash App. You know, we've got to support our own, and that reparations, we need it. We're looking forward because a lot of the keys are economics. You know, that is a lot of the problem. So we're going to make that happen. So thank you, Ms. Salaam, for all you do. Okay. Have a great day. Harlems of the world, forward ever, backward never, in the words of Marcus Messiah Garvey, and it takes a village. And did you want to say something, Ms. Salaam?
Well, the struggle continues. Isn't that what you say, Roger? Struggle continues.
Yes,
We
yes.
just have to beat that struggle back. Join us as we beat it back.
Okay, well, thank you. The struggle continues. A luta continua, in the words of Frelimo in Africa. So thank you. Harlem Network. Have a great day.
Mhm.